Jersey, 'cause this land.
Yes, Jerry and the Pacemakers. Cilla Black, of course.
Little children, you better tell on me.
Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. Now, he's due, as I say, at the theatre around the corner. He thinks he's coming to a television studio to talk to his old friend, director of music, Ron Goodwin, about music. And no doubt he will, but a lot more besides, because we have quite a reception committee waiting for him there. It's some of his old friends whom he hasn't seen for a long time, some that he has, but it's all of the original Temperance 7 playing the #1 hit that was his first #1 hit, You're Driving Me Crazy. So wait till we see his face when he gets out, but I better get there as quickly as he does. You know, the man who put the Beatles on the map, international record impresario, George Martin. Tonight, this is your life.
Devil in. Honestly. How awful.
Here's the original #1. And all the original Temperance 7. That's excellent too. Lots more surprises. The whole album of surprises here now. Thanks to your reception committee, Paul McDowell and the Temperance 7, Billy J. Kramer, Ron Goodwin, Jerry Marsden, your secretary for over 25 years, Shirley Burns, your great pals, John Burgess, and television cartoonist Tony Hart and his wife, Jean. I can say this is your life. Not quite the meeting you expected. Now, Ron Goodwin, George, in fact, was on the other side of the world when you phoned him to keep free tonight, January the 30th.
And George, being the good friend that he was, without question, said yes, he'd come and take part in a mythical musical program.
Well, George Martin, this is your life, and among your many achievements, you're the man who harnessed the Mersey sound of the 60s with the music of Jerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, and a group that was to become an international pop music legend. And if you keep looking at that screen, George, tonight one of them recalls those days, ex-Beatle Paul McCartney.
60s, when our late manager Brian Epstein came back from London after he'd been trying to hawk us around all the record companies, and he'd had no luck. And we were very disappointed at the time. Anyway, eventually we made it down to Abbey Road Studios, #2 studio, as you'll probably remember, and we played a little song for you called Love Me Do. Love, love. Anyway, George, we're really chuffed to find that you'd signed us at last, and I'm sure without your help we would have never made it. So this evening, this is your life, this is your night. Anyway, have a good time, George. See you later, okay?
Thank you, Paul McCartney. Well, like Paul, so many of those young musicians who came under your friendly wing, George, back in the early 60s remain good pals of yours, right, Jerry Marsden?
You're not kidding. Well, George actually gave us our first 3 hit records and put us on the road to stardom, and I've never forgiven him. Really. But thank you, George. Nice one.
Billy J. Kramer, you first met George 17 years ago.
Yes, I did. It was when I first came to London for the first time, and I was very frightened by it all. And I've been singing a Beatles song for, 4 months, maybe 5 months. And I don't know why, but George made me so nervous, you know. It took me 100 takes to do it, I think. But I can do it in 1 now, George, don't worry.
Well, George, all part of that international pop music family of yours who've the greatest respect for the high standards of perfection you always demand.
But all those stars should see you when you're with us, because you're always coming a cropper, Daddy.
From your Wiltshire home children, Lucy and Giles, with your wife, Judy, and daughter of your first marriage, Alexis. Judy, what's this about George coming a cropper?
Well, in spite of his sophisticated appearance, Eamon, the children have got the most accident-prone father imaginable.
Not true.
I think it is true, Alexis.
I'll say, he's always breaking things, arms, legs, nose.
But Lucy, the best you told me was on holiday in Italy.
Yes, we were going out to dinner because it was my birthday, and we were all waiting on the harbour while Daddy was bringing in the boat. We all just dressed up very smartly, and as he was getting off it, he fell over and splashed right into the water. And I mean, everybody on the side by the side of the water was laughing their heads off. But we tried to keep straight faces until we caught the eyes of each other. And then we too laughed our heads off because it was so like Daddy.
Well, George, creative inspiration in your business can strike at the most unexpected of times, even floundering around in your Sunday best after falling from a boat. At least that's the theory of one of your top recording artists who, if you look at that screen, demonstrates the point. Bernard Cribbins.
Hello, George. I've heard about you taking an unexpected dip when you were on holiday, all dressed up to go out for dinner. I wonder if that sort of thing inspired you when we were making this little album, Combination of Cribbins. Remember the sea shanty? Me gurgling away underwater? Track 2, side 2.
Crying for me.
Man overboard! I wonder how many people who bought the record guessed how you made me produce that particular sound. Well, now it can be told. You gave me a bucket of water, and I said, what do you want me to do with this? And you said, no, you stick your head in it and finish the number. So I did. Man overboard! And it's me! Great fun making records. Bet Frank Sinatra doesn't do a lot of that.
But it didn't put a damper on your friendship because he's here, that great comedy actor, Bernard Cribbins. Thank you, Bernard Cribbins. That made you nervous for a moment?
It did indeed.
Well, George Martin, this is your life. And you were born in Highbury, London on January the 3rd, 1926, son of a carpenter. There are your late parents, and here's you, aged 6 months, coming to grips with rocking of the unmusical kind. But one day, when you're 6 years old, there's great excitement at the family home when a piano is delivered.
As soon as you saw that piano, George, your little face lit up.
Your sister Irene, husband Ken Brownlow, with their daughter, your goddaughter Sandy. So, Irene, what was it that attracted George to the piano?
Well, Eamon, he must have always had a natural talent because neither of our parents were musical at all. But we had an uncle who had a piano business, and this uncle always played at parties at home, you know, and George used to climb up on the stool and was quite fascinated, in fact. So I think my parents realised that he needed a piano.
Well, the family and the piano moved to Bromley in Kent, and you go to Bromley Grammar School, and whenever you have a spare moment, you continue to teach yourself piano. By the time you're 14, you've got enough technique to suggest to a few classmates forming a dance band to play at local hops. Now, that's something over 38 years ago, George. I wonder if you recall what you called that dance band.
I do indeed. The Fortune Tellers. I thought it was terribly clever at the time.
And while the other three members of the band took their supper break at those dances, you, George, were always in great demand to play one particular piece of music.
Remember, George, the big request number from all the girls? Da, 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 da.
You haven't seen them since school days more than 35 years ago, but we found them, the other three members of the Fortune Tellers, Terry Roberts, Vic Moore, and Pat Greenaway. So, Terry, George was a bit of a pop star himself in those days.
Yeah, so he was, Eamon. He rose to the dizzy heights of local stardom by winning the local talent contest at the Lewisham Odeon, playing the Warsaw Concerto.
Yes, I remember he used to play it beautifully.
He had a lot of musical talent.
He had a lot of musical talent in those days, even, yes.
He used to get so fed up with playing the Warsaw Concerto, I think he used to wish he'd come out with something with us for a pint at times.
Thank you, Pat Greenaway, Vic Moore, and Terry Roberts. Well, school day's over. You start to train as a quantity surveyor, but in 1943, you volunteer for the Fleet Air Arm. You go to Port of Spain, Trinidad, for your training, where your musical interest extends to the ballet. Now, not just playing piano, but as we see here, the lead dancer in a service's send-up of Swan Lake. Now, that's you on top of the tableau.
And that's me at the bottom.
Director of the art school at the University of Ohio, from where we've flown him. He was your best pal in the service 36 years ago, ex-Fleet Air Arm navigator Eric Forrest. Eric, you actually painted a portrait of George, which we have here. Now, the shape of his nose had altered from when you first met him.
Yes, indeed. That's the accident-prone thing again. We were returning from Trinidad and coming aboard the ship. George tripped. He didn't fall overboard that time, but he did break his nose. But accidents or not, it was a very good time. It's marvelous to see George again.
Thank you, Eric Forrest. Well, while you're in the Fleet Air Arm serving in Portsmouth, you go to a piano recital at the Union Jack Club, given by the late concert pianist Eric Harrison. The concert over, the audience gone, you sit at the piano and begin to play a composition of your own. 1,000,000 to 1 chance happens. The concert pianist hears the music and comes back into the hall to see who's playing it and recommends you to send your composition to an organization called the Committee for the Promotion of New Music.
When a copy of the music reached me, I could hardly believe that the young composer was a self-taught musician.
The man who changed the course of your life, concert pianist, broadcaster, and writer, Sidney Harrison. So, Sidney, what did you do?
Well, he came to see me just after the war, and I looked at this young naval officer and I said to myself, this man has talent, he has ambition, I'm going to recommend him to the Guildhall School of Music. A few years went by. One day I was walking along the road and I met an acquaintance of mine who was an artist's manager at Parlophone. And I told him about George. And he said, well, there's a job going, actually. George got the job, and the consequences of that were extraordinary.
Thank you, Sidney Harrison. Well, George, everyone, of course, doesn't agree that your life has been one long artistic success. Recently, one of your records was included in the world's worst record show. This disc.
Whispering sands while prospecting for gold in one of the western states. I saw the silent windmill, the crazy...
Thank you.
Well done, Em.
Yes, George, I'm sorry I can't come through the doors, but thank you.
Thank you, Em.
Well, now, George, thanks to Sidney Harrison, you had 3 years of intensive classical training at the Guildhall, studying piano and oboe. But among your early success at Parlophone is an instrument neither oboe nor piano nor anything else the Guildhall was likely to have even heard of.
Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down.
Yes, the instrument, the wobble bore, the star, of course, that great Australian entertainer, Rolf Harris. Rolf, apart from anything else, I understand from you that George is a great believer in creating the right atmosphere in the studio for a recording.
Yeah, we did a live recording once, and I had a lot of Australians there, and he said supply them with some Australian beer. So we got Swan Lager. By the time we came to do the show, they were all over the place, demanding more lager. It was terrible.
Get me some more Swan Lager.
Some more Swan. And empty bottles landing in the piano, and oh dear, in the middle of taste. Really good. But I really must thank George, because I came to him with a song called Sunrise. I said, it must be authentic. He said, well, I think if you were to write a middle bit which tried to keep the same feeling, and because it's a bit boring just going on and on and on, a middle bit with a different sort of thing would just make it, you know. So I went away and thought about it and did it. And he insisted that they keep plugging it. I think it was 8 months on the plug list or something, and all of a sudden it took off and went to number 2, and it just changed my life. George, God bless you, thank you.
Thank you, Rolf Harris. Well, George, you've certainly got an ear for the unexpected, and when 4 students, 2 from Oxford, 2 from Cambridge, mount a satirical review in 1961, you immediately see the possibility of a record of their performance. It becomes the best-selling LP of Beyond the Fringe, and if you look at that screen, George, one of those students today in great demand in Hollywood recalls how you helped set him on the road to fame. Dudley Moore.
Hello, Eamon. Nice to talk to you, George. You may recognise that little piece, Strictly for the Birds, which you recorded for me, George. It was my first single. Anybody who's in the music business knows that you have a wonderful gift for discerning a great musical success, but how many people know that you also have a tremendous gift for discerning a sex symbol? I refer, of course, to me. I quote, in fact, from your own book, if I may, when you first saw Beyond the Fringe in London, you say, I quote, Dudley Moore, so embarrassing, was the lady killer of the group, sweetly attractive, the image of Tyrone Power. Wonderful. George, seriously, thank you for your expert and very charming and kind help in my professional career. I think, actually, you have missed your calling. I mean, you should be casting films in Hollywood. I mean, you know, sweetly attractive, the image of Tyrone Power. I mean, what can one say, George, except you're a visionary. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Dudley Moore. Well, you're made head of Parlophone Records and continue to mine the market in comedy records with stars like Bernard Cribbins there and others, including a name you immortalized in song.
That's right, George. Remember your great singing star, Fred Flange?
How about a nice glass of Beaujolais?
2 of your top recording artists, Irene Handel and Matt Monro. Matt, who's this Fred Flange?
Well, I had a call from George one day. I was between recording contracts at the time. And George asked me if I would do an impression of Frank Sinatra for a comedy album, which he was producing, which I did. I was a bit miffed because I wasn't asked to record under my own name. And I said he's a capital singer and his name is Fred Flange for the purposes of this record.
We can hear Fred Flange, alias Matt Monro, alias Frank Sinatra, singing your composition, George, You Keep Me Swinging.
My head is spinning, you've got me dangling on a line.
Sounds like Fred Flange might have a future.
Well, George asked me to make another record, fortunately, under my own name, and we recorded a little ballad, which he said it's a simple little song. We could do a sort of Nat King Cole on it. I said, not another impression. And we did a song called A Portrait of My Love.
Very successful one it was, too. And Irene, you were on that same comedy record we were talking about.
Yes. I don't know whether you still... It was almost 25 years ago. I don't know if you still recognise this old blackberry crumble. That was the first and almost the last time I saw you. We did this thing at Abbey Road in what seemed to me a few hours. And then the next time, you took me to the zoo and I had lunch in the members' dining room. But, George, I did a record a couple of months ago and I saw all this marvellous electronic equipment. And I thought there was George in Abbey Road doing this thing all by himself. I think you're simply fabulous.
Thank you, Irene Handel and Matt Monroe. Success with comedy, George, but as I mentioned, your great breakthrough as a backroom boy in the record industry came when in the early 60s you realized the young music booming from Merseyside would sweep the nation, and how right you were. With first the Beatles, then Jerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Kramer, and Cilla Black. Out of the 52 weeks of 1963, your company tops the charts 37 times. One of those chart toppers, a young lady whose talent you encouraged and who became a family friend, is tonight appearing in pantomime at Wimbledon. But so she can speak to you, we've arranged a live link at the theatre. Are you there, Aladdin? Yes, it's Cilla Black. Hi, Cilla.
Hello, Eamon. Yes, I'm here. I'm all here. Hello, George.
Hello, Syl.
Oh, it's lovely to speak to you on the air like this. You know, Eamon, I remember the first time I met George. It was a long time ago, and I thought he was gorgeous, because I thought he looked exactly like the Duke of Edinburgh. And he spoke like him as well. So you can imagine my disappointment when I found out he came from Highbury and was just as common as me. Hey, but George, do you remember all those skiing holidays we used to have together? I remember one particular one. We went to a disco, Bobby and I, and you and Judy, and I was dancing with you. And you've all heard how clumsy he is. Well, I was dancing with George. On this occasion it was. I was dancing with George, and he was doing a punk rock dance. He was jumping up and down, and you know how he's 8 feet tall? Well, he banged his head on the chandelier, and it all came crashing to the floor. And George, I can honestly say that night you had your own personal smash hit. But really, seriously, George, Bobby and I, well, we think you're terrific, and we're ever so proud to be part of your life. And I'm sorry I can't be with you this evening, but have a super time. I'm going to have a drink on you now. Cheers. Good night. God bless, George.
Thank you.
Cheers, Cilla Black, and good luck for the rest of the show at the Wimbledon Theatre. Well, for more than 30 years, George, as an international record producer, you've been the talented and patient guiding hand to set so many stars on the road to success. But as your sister Irene there mentioned, you too had a guiding hand, very briefly, when you were just 6 years old, and used to climb onto that piano stool to sit next to your uncle as he played at family parties, and he showed you how to pick out your very first tune on the piano. Appropriately enough, a famous pop tune of the day, this tune. Somebody Stole My Gun. And at the age of 83, he's playing it for you again right now, your Uncle Cyril Bishop. George Martin, man of music, this is your life.